Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
Let's do it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. And as Matt Green said, maybe in the cold open here, let's do it, because I hit that record button before. I knew he was going to say something with that swig of water he takes before each and every episode. But my good friend down there in Dacula, Georgia, Philly University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back. It was a great November weekend we had, I think, in the college football world and just in general. Got a little cold last week, but Saturday was perfect football weather.
I think that was the best. It was definitely football weather a little bit. It got really hot, actually, here in Tennessee. Like, it was sweaty yesterday. I don't know what it was like in Athens, because you were at the game. You were at Georgia Mizzou, so it felt like football weather for you. Was it when the sun went down when it started to feel like that, or were you hot to begin things? What was it like?
It was honestly perfect. Yeah, I was in my 30s. You know, I'm a little more mature with these things. So rocked like jeans and like a short sleeve shirt like up there, but it's like I had to change of clothes in the back seat, you know, just in case. Had to feel it out. And so I went like shorts and like long sleeves, and it was like, yeah, probably like, I don't know, high 70s at kickoff, like low 60s by the end of the game. It's like it was pretty ideal.
Okay. Well, tell us about it. Tell us about your weekend. You and Tori going up to Georgia Mizzou, what it was like, the game day experience. What did you do? What did you see? What was it like? And especially in comparison to the week prior in Jacksonville for the Florida game.
Well, see, it's a whole different experience. So we actually played it real low key, because we're not a far drive from Athens. So it was like you know, we're kind of watching the games on the way up to Athens. But yeah, I mean, kind of got there like an hour or so before and just hung out for a little bit, and then walked into the stadium. But it was so definitely not the same vibe that the cocktail party is. But obviously that's still going down in Athens. I just wasn't really a part of it. The tailgating scene this week.
Well, the seats look good. Are you and Tori yellers? Do you get involved? What is Tori like during the game?
Am I a yeller? Absolutely, sir. You gotta be a part of the crowd. That's why you're there. You know, it's not a wine and cheese crowd. You know, if you just wanna watch the game, you can go home. You gotta if you're in the building, you gotta make some noise. Get that home field advantage.
Well, your voice is intact, so that's good. You didn't lose your voice over the weekend.
Oh no, but I mean, I'm a professional. We do these things.
Okay. Is Tori also a yeller? Have you gotten her to the point where she's yelling at the games? Because Sam is not. My wife, I don't know. She's kind of, I guess. It depends. We're going to the Georgia Tennessee game in a couple weeks, so I'll see what she's like there. But I don't know. I think it's more of like when good things happen, I think we cheer. We have a good like triple high five that we do. That I'll do with her. Yeah. But I don't think we're.
To answer your question, yeah, she's definitely a yeller. She knows the role of the fans. We gotta do our part.
That's interesting. I'm just not. I don't know. I've gotten more and more as the years have gone on here in Knoxville, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just never gonna be like a loud. I'm just not a loud person in general, and I'm a pretty reserved, quiet person. I think that's probably the biggest misnomer about me, is that I think people assume because I do a podcast that I'm an extrovert and a big time extrovert, but I'm actually pretty introverted. And as you know, in North Georgia, I have my headphones on, walking around, listen to podcasts, kind of doing my own thing. I don't know. I think for me, when I go to stuff, when I go to games on Fridays and high school games and stuff like that, I don't know. I keep to myself. I'm just kind of. I don't really react like that.
At a high school game, though, I mean, yeah, you're not gonna go nuts. I mean, you're not rooting. Your kid's not playing. You're not. You know, you're not involved with it. You're there to cover a game or whatever the case may be. But yeah, when you're supporting your home team, you gotta be going nuts.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I suffer internally, or I celebrate internally, where I'll turn away and I'll just be like. And we'll see how I feel 2 weeks against the Dawgs when they come into town following a big battle that we'll get into this weekend, because it's it's a superb slate coming up here this weekend. But I mean, this past weekend turned out to be just great all across the board, where there really wasn't any letdown spots from the opening part of the day at noon all the way down to the late evening. There was just a lot of good games this weekend as we finished up week 10 here, Matt Green, going into week 11. But don't forget, folks, if you have not already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on your preferred podcast player. If you're watching us on YouTube, first off, thank you for checking out the show. Pod Divided here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, the college football show that we do twice a week during the college football season with Matt Green from the University of North Georgia alumni. Matt Green, go Night Hawks. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe this video if you're watching us on YouTube right now. It helps other people find the show and helps this very show continue to grow. Speaking of that, make sure if you're an Apple Podcast or Spotify listener, you leave this show a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify right now, if that is indeed how you are listening to this very show and have not already done so. You can also email us at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com and check out the website. Yeah, the website. It's great. New, big, all that good stuff. chasethomaspodcast.com. Matt Green, how did we do going into week 11 this week and putting a bow on week 10?
Oh man, so I was excited. I knew I had a good week, and I thought surely I made up some ground in the standings, but not so fast, my friend. So I was 9-2 overall on the weekend. The only 2 losses were Kansas State and Texas A&M. Both teams just so close to pulling the upset too. So I was nearly 11-0 overall on the weekend, but 7-4 against the spread. So another solid showing for myself. And surely that would be enough to make up some ground. But no, Chase Thomas over here also went 9-2. And even better, went 9-2 against the spread on the weekend. Ooh. So you had your first, probably your 2 worst weeks of the season in weeks 8 and 9. And then you bounced back in a big way. So it was the only games you missed overall win-loss wise, Oklahoma and Miami, and then the only 2 you missed against the spread would have been Miami and then Georgia. So you did have, you were nailing almost all of the ones. You had Texas winning, but Kansas State covering. You had Ole Miss winning, A&M covering, Oregon State winning, Colorado covering, Iowa winning, Northwestern covering. So well done, good sir. It was an excellent week for you. So on the year, you are 74-36 overall. I'm 70-40 against the spread. You are 63, 43-4 to my 58-48-4. So 4-game lead overall for you, 5-game lead against the spread. And then Zeus. Oh, man, I almost forgot Zeus. Biggest story of all. I told you it was a home dog kind of weekend. I'm not sure I prefaced our pick'em by saying it was a home dog weekend. I don't know if I gave an official home dog. Zeus was 3-0 on home dogs over the weekend. We had Oklahoma State winning outright, NC State winning outright, and Arizona winning outright. Boom. 11-3 on the year. 78.6% Zeus with his home dog of the week.
Shout out to Zeus. Great weekend for Zeus on the front.
Absolutely.
We like to see it. We like to see it, Matt Green. Speaking of things we don't like to see, because this was tough, where I've gone back and forth on what to do with this, because the family, they're like, well, we cheer for Tennessee and Georgia. Like, we do it for, and I'm over here like, no, every week I'm waiting for a dog loss. Waking up on Saturday and I'm like, absolutely not. Because look, Georgia going down to Mizzou helps Georgia, Tennessee be a bigger deal in 2 weeks. Still a big deal. We'll see how Ole Miss goes on Saturday, but it would have been more help if Mizzou had taken care of business in Athens. But that's part of the rivalry. Like, I don't know if you're like this, but I've never understood the whole SEC as a whole when your team's not playing. And when Florida's playing and in the spot, like, you're not rooting for Florida. You're not like, I want Florida to beat Mizzou if that helps, even if that makes our path to the SEC championship that much worse, just because you have a significant other that went to Florida. No, that's not how it works. Like I don't want that. That's not how it's going to be each and every week. I'm not pulling for the Dogs.
Well, it depends because there is an element to I want a bigger game atmosphere. So you beat somebody, like I want them to win all their games till they play us, so our schedule looks better. Like there's part of that that's obviously like that's when you're in control of your own destiny. But sometimes you mathematically need someone to lose. True. So it's like at this point, the Georgia-Tennessee game is not going to decide the SEC East if Georgia doesn't lose to Ole Miss next week. So so obviously in that situation, then Tennessee is going to root against Georgia. So that's their preserving any hopes of also getting the SEC championship.
How would they get in even if they beat Georgia and Georgia loses to Ole Miss? Because the tiebreaker would be Florida, because y'all beat Florida and Tennessee lost to Florida. So I don't even know how Tennessee can still win the East.
But that's only if it's like a 3-way tie. Like Florida is down there. They have 3 conference losses. There is Missouri, obviously, but Tennessee would have to have beaten Missouri in this scenario. So that if Georgia loses to Ole Miss, then lose to Tennessee, that would be their second conference loss, and Tennessee's the only other team with 2 conference losses.
So it wouldn't matter that
the tiebreaker.
Okay, so I was wondering because I was thinking like because they would both have 2 conference losses, they would look to see how they could break it up, and the way they would break it up is the Florida game that Tennessee lost and Georgia did not. So that's interesting.
No, it's just it has nothing to do with Florida though. I mean, it's just about the head-to-head. Like, they have the same record, and then Tennessee beat Georgia head-to-head, and that would be it, because Missouri would have a 3rd conference loss if they lose to Tennessee. So true, they're out of it. Kentucky, Florida already have 3 conference losses. So
it's still very much in play. Only a 11, 12-point line. It opened up for Georgia Ole Miss. Game day will be there next Saturday. But here's the problem with that. Like this is
night game too.
Big night game, and Tennessee back-to-back CBS. So I'm sure the family's very thrilled about Gary Danielson calling back-to-back Tennessee games for them. Always a favorite in my family. But back-to-back CBS games for Tennessee, and then we'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks. But that will be this preview show, getting into Georgia Ole Miss at night under the lights in Sanford, and then Tennessee Mizzou solidifying number 2 going into Georgia week next week, where Tennessee is now a favorite by 2, playing their best ball of the year. So we'll see how that goes for Tennessee and Columbia as well. Matt Green, let's first talk about your Dogs, because we don't really I did the Vol show, Tennessee Sports Guys, with Ryan and company earlier today. So talked a lot of Vol. There's only so much to say about Tennessee UConn. They blew them out. It wasn't ever close. Took care of business. Best the offenses looked. Took care of everything. Got a lot of young guys, a lot of playing time. It was the first debut.
Nico's the next Bryce Young.
He's not even just the next Bryce. He's just big Bryce. Like he's so good in the pocket. He's so good at managing. Like the way he moves around is just, it's like watching a 6'8" Bryce. Like it really is. And he throws a pretty ball. Touchdown drive on his first one. I mean, he's huge. His pocket awareness is the thing that blows you away. It's just, he is so good at knowing when pressure is coming, and he is very, very comfortable throwing off platform, which Bryce Young obviously was really good at. The difference is Bryce had to move out of the pocket because of his size, and he can't just sit in the middle of sit in the pocket and just dice a team to death. Nico can do either. Nico will be able to sit in the pocket and dice you up, or he'll be able to roll out. And the flamethrower that Nico Iamaleava is going to put on the SEC the next 2 years. Like I went on a rant where I'm like, okay, so Tennessee basketball is the preseason number 1 in the SEC. They look like a Final Four team right now. Tom Izzo, after getting beat by Tennessee last week, he said that they look like a Final Four team. So they're the best team in the SEC. So you're going to get a lot of that. Guess who's the preseason best team in baseball? Tennessee Volunteers. Guess who? D1 baseball, the best guys in the business. Compared Tennessee.
Here?
Hold on, I'm not done. The best team in
preseason rankings.
Hold on, we're not done yet. So Tennessee baseball obviously made it to Omaha 2 of the last 3 years. The best team of all the last 20 years, 2 years ago. And then you look at this year and what he has. So he has a number 1 recruiting class in 2024.
Can't be the best team of the last 20 years if you don't win the championship.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It happens. Teams lose. Baseball, it's a long year.
You can be one of the best, but no, you can't be the best team of the last of decades without you even win the championship that season. No
yes, you
way.
Can. Absolutely dominant. No. Perfect SEC play? No, they were. So, and then we keep moving. Keeping it moving.
73-9 Warriors aren't the greatest team of all time. They didn't win the championship. Like that's how it works.
Okay. Well, anyway, continuing on here. The Patriots, that 18-1 year was still the best team of the last 20 years. Like, they were still the best team that year and one of the best. Like, they still are. Like, you can't take that away from them.
Respectfully disagree.
Oh, this is this is grinding my gears. This drives me nuts.
The Seattle Mariners aren't the greatest. 01 Mariners aren't the greatest team of all time. Like, they had the best, regular season of all time, but that's just how it works. That's how sports works.
I disagree.
I don't make the rules.
But to put a bow on all of that, you're going to have a run here if you're a Vol fan, because the Tennessee baseball, who is now being compared to Alabama football with the level of depth and recruiting that Tony Vitello is doing. D1 baseball, that's not me. That's the premier college baseball analyst in the country saying we have depth on depth. Another top 20 prospect just committed. You have built a behemoth here. And what I've said is, like, that's not going anywhere. And then you get to walk into Nico in the fall. The stretch run here, Matt Green, is unbelievable. The next year, being a Vol, I'm going to get tired of winning, Matt Green. I'm going to get tired of so much winning here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that I don't know what to do with it. You get to go into hibernation as a Dog fan. You get to go to sleep in January. You get to come back in August. Like, you get 8 months off. I have to deal with all this winning month after month.
I'm glad you're loving the preseason predictions while Georgia's got this third longest winning streak in SEC football history, and the women just won the SEC in soccer. So, we're in everything school over here. So I don't want to hear any of that nonsense. But you went so far off the tangent. So I had to bring this back a little bit. I'm glad we're keeping our expectations realistic on Nico. Talking about what Bryce Young can't do and what Nico can do. Like, Bryce Young was the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft.
Nico will be the number 1 overall pick if he plays and is healthy for 2 years.
Start one game before we're saying he is anywhere close to Bryce Young. Come on.
Nico is the truth, and that was so much fun. 2 series. Dimes.
We've seen Jacob Eason, looked really good, had a lot of tools, 5-star.
He was also a statue in the pocket.
Of course. I mean, there's different reasons why different guys don't pan out, but we've seen plenty of 5-star quarterbacks that don't turn out to be the best player in the country. So Nico, no hating on Nico here, but let's not get too carried away here. 6'8" Bryce Young.
It's a good time. It's a great time to be a Vol, Matt Green. I am going to get tired of the winning.
I'm glad we didn't talk about Tennessee for too long. Clearly, you were so Tennessee talked out. You didn't have anything left. But no. Look. So let's go into Georgia. I felt this game felt different. Like, this felt like you were playing a good team and you're satisfied with the victory, honestly. Like, with the Auburn game and the South Carolina game earlier this year for Georgia, I think it was a lot of what's going on? How is Auburn just gashing Georgia on the ground and just getting to the outside and keeping this game close and everything? Like, same with South Carolina, just kind of dominating the first half of that game. So those games, and it's like these teams are not good football teams. But with Missouri, it was like, okay, we know Missouri. We've seen them do some good things this year. And then you saw Luther Burden get the long touchdown early in this game. And this team's a good team. So I don't feel any sense of negativity coming out of this close win like I did like the South Carolina and Auburn wins.
There was a lot to take away from this game because I thought it was really good, and obviously Mizzou fought really hard until the end. I think officiating was bad on both ends, but I will say it's still just one of those things where I don't know what pass interference is anymore. Like, it's one of those, I don't think the SEC knows. I think it's just they're figuring it out.
Which ones are you talking about?
Well, there was the one that they picked up late in the game where
the offensive pass interference.
Well, the offensive one was weird where they did.
That was like, I've never seen a call like that. I couldn't even know, like, they call it on the guy that's running the route. Like,
well, they called it on Dylan Bell. They called it on the wrong one. They meant Dylan Bell, and they said Dajan Edwards. So Dajan Edwards was just over in the vicinity. It didn't make sense for him. So they said it was actually Dylan Bell, and they didn't mean to say number 30 on that. But pulled it off because it didn't hit the line of
behind the line of
scrimmage.
scrimmage.
Yeah,
right?
so they picked it up and everything else. But then there was the other one where they didn't call it on Georgia late with Mizzou. Was it a third down? I think it was a big third down on the right-hand side, if you remember. But there was like on both sides.
I remember one they complained about, but I
Mhm.
also remember a terrible one that was called on Julian Humphrey earlier in the game too. So it's like I honestly, I think the biggest one I noticed was like at least 2 or 3 holds on that long run by Cody Schrader, like that 30-yard touchdown run. But I mean, honestly, the worst one, and I'm glad it didn't have bigger implications, because if Nazir Stackhouse scores on that pick six, that big guy touchdown, and the block in the back or whatever they called on that were illegal blindside, it was literally Mondin like hitting the intended receiver like as the ball's coming in, and it got picked. So it's like it wasn't a blindside block or anything. And then so if Stackhouse goes to the house on that and it's negated because of a garbage call like that on the return, that'd have been awful. But that was the best moment of the game for sure. Like just see it. I don't know how big Stackhouse is, 330, 340, just moving down the sideline. But that was really the one time. Obviously, it's a 10-10 game at halftime, and it's clearly a close game that Missouri is able to win. But it didn't feel like Georgia was playing poorly. I just didn't feel it like any kind of concern going in the second half. But when Georgia was held to the field goal early in the fourth quarter, and then Missouri gets it, I think 9 minutes left, down 6. I think that's the first time in the game it's like, okay, they actually can come down, take the lead here in the fourth quarter. And that's when you saw the Stackhouse pick, and then that things kind of changed from that. And Georgia in the second half had 5 second-half drives, 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and then ran it out at the very end. So when the game was really on the line late, the defense got 2 fourth-quarter interceptions. Like it just felt like a good, like gutty performance against like a good team. Like I think Missouri looks like clearly a top 15 team. Like, you want to be blasting teams and be flexing that you're the number 1 team in college football, but it's like, who's really doing that? Like there's a lot, like I think Alabama's been tied or losing at halftime of over half of their games this year. And they're still competing for the SEC and still a college football playoff contender. So I think, the one area of concern, I think, is how many Schrader definitely ended over the 100 yards. They had 151 rushing yards on the game. This is the first year right now. The year isn't over yet. Georgia's sitting at exactly 100 yards a game allowed, rushing yards a game allowed. And that's the most since 2018. Georgia's been under 100 yards every year since 2018. And that's the one thing I would be concerned about, because 2022, the run defense actually allowed fewer yards than 2021. It was in the 70s, I think, last year. So that's the one area where Georgia is good on the defensive line. But I mean, it'd be pretty ridiculous if they could be as good as those 2021, 2022 teams with all the first round talent.
Interesting. That's not good based on who you've got over the next 2 weeks with Quinshon Judkins for Ole Miss, and then Jalen Wright and Dylan Sampson for Tennessee.
But with that being said,
the Ashes are going to be there.
With that being said, it's still the number 2 run defense in the SEC this year. So it's just not clearly above and beyond number 1 like it has been. So it's one of the better run defenses.
Who's number 1?
Tennessee is actually 1 right now. I think that's like 98 yards a game or something. And then I think Georgia and A&M, I think, are exactly tied, giving up 100 yards a game.
What's the loss of Demus Johnson look like for them the rest of the way?
I mean, that's huge. He was a Butkus finalist last year, but I think he honestly hasn't had as good of a season. I think Mondin is the better pro prospect. I think Mondin's kind of the better linebacker probably, but Demus Johnson is kind of that captain, that kind of quarterback on defense. But you've seen with what Georgia's been playing at linebacker this year, like Jalen Walker, he played his most snaps, and he's usually being a pass rusher just because they're trying to find a way to get this guy on the field. But he played the most snaps of his career against Missouri on Saturday, and this dude just wreaks havoc when he's on the field. he's always making a play. And then you got Xavier Sori was obviously the big time recruit. But he's honest. He might not be filling in. It might be the other true freshman. CJ Allen that stepped in. I saw Raylan Wilson. Those Georgia signed three of the top 5 inside linebackers in the country last year. And so you're already seeing 2 of those guys get on the field. And that's kind of one of the advantages of the way Georgia plays. Even though Dumas Johnson and Mondon are the clear 1 and 2 at inside linebacker, they just get so many guys on the field. And it's kind of like a, I don't know, just the way they initiate their defensive players. In 2019, it was Trayvon Walker and Nakobe Dean are part of the third down package and they're future superstars. And it's kind of you just see those guys that are kind of in those third down specialty roles. By the end of their freshman year, these guys are making an impact. And then by the sophomore, junior year, they're star players. So I think there's definitely some of those guys. If there's one position, even as good of a guy as Dumas Johnson is, if there's one position that Georgia is just absolutely loaded at, it's definitely linebacker.
All right. I like it. And you have some 5-star help on the way too. I seem to recall. So there's just, Georgia's going to be pretty loaded at linebacker year in, year out. What did Mizzou do well?
But there could be an intangible loss for sure with a guy like that, losing with that experience on defense.
What did Mizzou do well that the Vols or Ole Miss can watch the tape and build off of over the next 2 weeks that maybe worries you a little bit?
Well, I think definitely running the football. I think that's where Ole Miss and Tennessee both want to run the ball, and then they both have capable runners at quarterback. So, we saw Brady Cook was able to make some plays with his legs. So I think it's tough to say. Brady Cook might be the best passer of those 3. Jackson Dart, you probably would say, but I think Milton is probably the clear third. But
Milton's actually completing nearly 80% of his passes the last 3 weeks. Milton's actually completing
for sure. He's
crazy
definitely
amount of balls right now.
And I would have said before Jackson Dart absolutely went off on this Texas A&M defense, I think Missouri clearly had the best passing attack of those 3 offenses. So it's tough to say. I think that it's definitely a blueprint for what those teams for what Missouri did well. And I think I would say Tennessee's probably got the worst offense of those 3. But if things are working in at home and everything, it's kind of a whole different beast. But yeah, I think Ole Miss can definitely do some things that Missouri was able to do.
I like it. Final thing on Tennessee or on Georgia, Mizzou. Biggest surprise. What did you think this game was going to be that ultimately it did not end up being, Matt Green?
I think probably the way Georgia's offense moved the ball. They were good, like I said, in 5 second half drives. They scored 2 touchdowns, 2 field goals, and then ran the clock out to end the game. But Missouri was getting multiple stops in the first half. That's why it was a 10-10 game going into halftime. So 33 for 131 on the ground, that was fine. Georgia's running game was fine, but I thought Missouri definitely did a good job of limiting the run, probably better than Georgia did. And then also, both teams had a few sacks, but I would think that's definitely the most times Carson Beck's been sacked this season. So getting some pressure getting some pressure on Beck, I think, was definitely something they did well. But you still saw Georgia without Bowers. They still have so many ways to beat you. There's so many playmakers on this offense, and Ladd McConkey has gotten healthy and stepped up right at the right time. These 2 games against Florida and Missouri, he's really been shown that he's the clear best option after Bowers.
It seems like, Matt Green, Georgia and Alabama are now on a collision course for the SEC title game. Certainly what it feels like. And I'm sure that's what a lot of networks and everybody else in the SEC are hoping for, because it secretly hasn't been since the national title that we've seen Georgia and Alabama face off. So it's been a little while since we've seen that. And I don't know where I'm at with Bama still, because LSU, the defense is still, we knew coming in it was going to be bad. The defense is still bad. They're probably going to have to make some changes there this offseason. You give up 42 points to Jalen Milroe and company. Winning at Alabama is always going to be difficult. And remember, this team only won by a point last year at home against Alabama. Like, I just didn't really see it for this year's LSU team. That being said, Jalen Milroe had a really good game. He was 15 of 23, 219 through the air. He ran for 155 yards and 4 scores. So I think that was the biggest thing, is that he started running, and it just didn't really look like the Tommy Rees offense that we'd seen those first few weeks, and just kind of Alabama really struggling to find their identity and to figure out what works and what doesn't. This was more of like, we're going to let Jalen Milroe just do what Jalen Milroe is really good at and let him cook. And he had a really good game, like definitely his best game as the quarterback for the Crimson Tide. And it's a little scary on that end, because he was really good and deserves a lot of credit for being really good. But I don't know, has your opinion shifted on Alabama following the 42-28 win over LSU? Or are you still pretty dubious of how this team stacks up down the stretch here and heading into the SEC title game and everything else?
I feel like two things can be true. Like Jalen Milroe is definitely improved. And this is kind of what we said. It's like, this guy is such a dynamic athlete. Like, you can mold a good offense around this guy and kind of hide what his weaknesses are. And this guy he's just a ridiculous athlete. Like the just how explosive he is, like how fast I really want to see what this guy does at the combine. Honestly, I guess this guy like running a 4.3. Like, I don't even know. He's insanely fast, but it's hard to. So obviously he's definitely improved. That at Texas A&M was a game that I would say he probably won that with his arm more than any other game this season. But obviously 4 touchdowns, 150 yards on the ground. He is a playmaker, but going off on LSU's defense, like, isn't like the feat that it should be, right? Like, everyone's kind of gone off on this LSU defense. So I think if you're questioning Alabama's offense once they actually, get in a game that's like put on Jalen Milroe's arm, like, I think those questions are still there, because LSU is like the 97th ranked defense in college football. Like, they've been terrible this season. So it's hard to know exactly, because like I said, like this LSU defense has just been giving up points to everybody.
Yeah, are you scared of them in an SEC title game? Does this version of Alabama make you wonder if they would beat you in a neutral site in the Dome next month?
I mean, I think you obviously have to worry about Alabama. You're not just going to like blow them out. But I think if Georgia, I would say as a Georgia fan watching this game, I felt like LSU worried me more because Jaden Daniels is everything. Like, Milroe is a ridiculous athlete, but he's got weaknesses. And Jaden Daniels was just dropping dimes. Like, their receivers are just next level. Like, I think these are first round pick level receivers. Like, Jermaine Burton is fine. He's a good player. Isaiah Bond is fine. He's a good player, but it's like, they're not just these superstars that LSU has. So, but because of LSU's defense, it's obviously they're probably not going to stop Georgia. But so Alabama's definitely got a better defense, and that's what can actually get some stops against Georgia. But I think just with Kirby Smart's experience, this team feels so much like the 2017 Alabama team that wasn't blowing everybody out, that Jalen Hurts was kind of a game manager, but was making plays with his legs, and they could dominate most teams on the ground. And Georgia absolutely put the shackles on that team in the first half. This team doesn't have a Tua as their backup quarterback to throw in the third quarter like that one did. But so I think you would see Georgia approach that team the same way of like, you stop the run and make Jalen Milroe beat you with his arm. And they're probably going to dare him to beat him with his arm, because I think that's the only way you can really beat this Alabama team. So if also, as LSU never heard of a quarterback spy, like, I never saw anyone spying Milroe this entire game. Like, he would just drop back and just take off. Like, same with Jaden Daniels. I don't, maybe they were trying to spy him, they just couldn't catch up to him. But these two quarterbacks were just doing everything in the first half.
No, for sure. And it was fun. And obviously, speaking of both quarterbacks, what did you make of the non-targeting call on Dallas Turner that knocked Jaden Daniels out of this game, Matt Green?
Oh, dude. It's so weird how like the discourse on football has like changed of just like he got a 15-yard penalty. A 15-yard penalty used to be a big deal, I thought. Like getting a pass interference, automatic first down, a chop block, whatever. A 15-yard penalty is a big deal. So he's not trying to do anything dangerous. And I hate people now bringing up, oh, he was the one who hit Quinn Ewers too. It's like he's a pass rusher who tries to sack quarterbacks, and sometimes he's gonna hit one really hard. Like that was terrible to me. It was a bad, like it was a really hard hit. I think 20 years ago, it's not even a penalty. Like he's not like, it's nothing excessive about what he's doing. It's just the circumstances. He's kind of coming in high. He's not like leading with the crown of his helmet or anything, but he's coming in high. And in this day and age, you want to call it unnecessary roughness on a quarterback. Like that's fine. But like, you want to eject a dude for that? That makes no sense to me. Like that's what we all need to be talking about when you're talking about targeting. We need to go, let's go straight to the punishment. It's like, so you think this guy it needs to be ejected from the game for doing this? Like, no, you get ejected for what dude for Texas A&M did in the Ole Miss game for uppercutting someone in the nuts. Like you don't get ejected for just playing a little bit too rough. You get a penalty for unnecessary roughness. Like that's why it's a penalty.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it was definitely 15. I just think we're so conditioned to look for targeting now. And I think in that instance, like it was targeting. Like it is targeting. Like it is the rule where it's like, if that wasn't Alabama, if that was somebody, as someone who played in Tuscaloosa a few weeks ago and saw an Alabama team that has been heavily penalized. I think they had 5 penalties in this game too. Had exactly 1 penalty, and it wasn't even a live ball penalty for 5 yards. That it just winning in Tuscaloosa is a little bit more difficult for a multitude of reasons. But that was one of those where it's like, if that's played elsewhere, is that getting called? Like it was a textbook targeting, Matt. Like I don't think there's any way around it. Like that,
I think the
it's an
crown of the
ejection.
helmet. I think the crown of the helmet is very important when it comes to the textbook targeting. Like that's like an unsafe play. It's like forcible contact to like the neck or head area. It's like, well, if I'm taller than the quarterback and I'm coming in, like, you know, I might be coming into his head, in the head neck area. Like, I don't know. It's we need to, like, defensive players have to have a clear definition on how they're allowed to play defense, because you just see some dudes like getting called for penalties when they're actually like trying to do the safest thing and not like actually avoid some contact sometimes, but it's late or something on a guy sliding. So I think you just got to give defensive players a clear instruction on what he's supposed to do. And in that instance, like, I'm not really sure what Dallas Turner's supposed to do differently. He's trying to sack the quarterback. Like, this is football. Like, this is why I didn't play it at that level, because it's dangerous. But it is what it is. It's a physical sport.
For sure. Matt Green. Washington survives USC. They stay undefeated. Did we learn anything new about either? And we'll talk about something that happened in the fallout of this one. But Washington drops 50 on the Trojans here. And USC, their defense still could not come through for Caleb Williams and company, because Caleb Williams had a great game in this for USC, and he's been great throughout. But the thing that you're just dumbfounded at how bad this USC defense has been all year. Washington, they're not a run-first team. They ran for 316 yards, 7.5 yards a carry. They gave up 572 yards overall, and this was bonkers. I saw this from ESPN. This is the 5th straight Pac-12 game that they've surrendered at least 480 yards. Like, it just took way too long. And we said before the year, like, the Alex Grinch problem wasn't going anywhere. And Lincoln, unfortunately, he was loyal and he kept him around too long. And now it cost you your best quarterback you'll probably ever have at USC, because Caleb Williams is still just like an unbelievable talent that will not play an important playoff game at USC over these last 2 years because you didn't nail the DC hire, and you could have adjusted this offseason. You could have made a change and gotten ahead of this coming into this year, but firing Grinch now with 3 losses just feels like, man, this is a season of what if you're a USC fan. You're pretty sick about it.
At the same time, like, if I'm Lincoln Riley, like, I'm going to have another quarterback that's good. Like, how much better is Caleb Williams? How much better is Caleb Williams and Baker Mayfield than
a lot better
than Kyler Murray? Like,
a lot better.
Those guys were superstars. They won the Heisman. They were number 1 overall pick in the draft. Like, obviously the pro upside, say what you want. Like, Caleb Williams isn't, like, I don't know. He's not leaps and bounds like the best quarterback I've ever seen play. Like, he's, Justin Fields was amazing, like, in college. Trevor Lawrence was amazing. Like, Deshaun Watson, like, we've seen Joe Burrow, like, we've seen Cam Newton, like, so many, like, generational quote unquote talents. I don't even know what that word means anymore. I thought that meant, like, what is it from Saving Silverman? One and only means like one and only.
I have not heard a Saving Silverman reference in a
that's an old school
long time.
But this game basically went exactly like how I thought it was going to go. It's like, I think USC is a really dangerous team for Washington. Like, this is a team they can get into a track meet, but at the same time, like, they're USC, and how many stops are they really going to get over the course of 60 minutes? And you saw not many. Like, they did get a stop there in the fourth quarter at one point. I think they had a chance to take the lead, but Washington was able to get a stop right back. But yeah, I mean, 52-42, like this, I think, what was it? 42-42 at the end of the third? Like this, then they started to play a little bit of defense. But yeah, I mean, this USC team it's kind of exactly what you expected. I mean, other than the fact that this is Lincoln Riley's worst year as a head coach, the first time he's ever lost 3 games in the regular season, this is kind of what you expected. It's especially since we talked about the Pac-12 being better than it's kind of ever been. So if some of those Oklahoma teams, if they were in a little bit better conference, they might have been exposed a couple times. But this USC team, like, they're not balanced enough to be able to take care of business in this good conference. And you got to wonder what that means going to the Big Ten. Maybe, I don't know, like the complete opposite of everything that USC is doing is what the Big Ten West is right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing in the Washington perspective, because Michael Penix was great in this one too, and we talked about how well they ran the football all over USC. The thing that stands out to me, though, Bill Connolly, who does a great job for ESPN, he had his new S&P Plus, which I love going through every Sunday morning here. And Washington's now 37th in defense in S&P Plus. One of the best offenses, obviously, in the sport. You can't win a title 37th, and they got gashed by USC in this game. And I just think when you look at Oregon, who's like winning 63-9 every week, and Oregon just looks so complete on both sides of the ball. And I understand that Washington won the game, but it was in Washington. Next time they play will be, is it Vegas? Where the Pac-12 title game?
Vegas, yeah.
I just think you're on a collision course, and if you're a Washington fan, you're just nervous because you're having this special year, and it feels like you have this wrecking ball coming back and beating Oregon twice. This version of Oregon that we're seeing, they're just more complete. Like, Oregon still just feels like the more complete team, and I think Washington has some real holes and issues on this defense that I think is going to ultimately upend them, and that's gonna. This is why you play the game, see how it plays out, but they can win out and get there. But for whatever reason, I just have this sinking feeling that we're looking at a scenario where Washington's gonna walk into the Pac-12 title game undefeated and then go up against a buzzsaw complete Oregon team and not be able to beat them twice.
Don't count out the Oregon State Beavers here. All right,
true.
They're gonna play a spoiler down the stretch here, and I don't know. I mean, if they could play spoiler enough to even get in the Pac-12 championship, I don't know if that's a thing, but they do play Washington and Oregon between now and the end of the season. But also, who's the ultimate Pac-12 spoiler? Every year they spoil the Pac-12 because no one wants to pick them, and they win the damn conference anyway. It's Utah. So Washington's still got to get by Utah. They've had some close games with Stanford and Arizona State. Like, I don't know. I'm still worried about Washington actually getting to the Pac-12 championship without a loss.
Matt Green play this game each week during these recap shows. Nothing burger or something, Matt Green. USC fires Alex Grinch. Notre Dame with Jared Parker next after another bad offensive showing at Clemson. Do you think either of those coordinator changes are something that you're interested in and could be pivotal moments for both Marcus Freeman and Lincoln Riley, or do you think it's just we kind of know what both these coaches are at this point and what the programs are, that it won't be a gigantic hire? Because I think these are actually huge hires for both programs, depending on how things go this offseason.
No, I think they're absolutely huge hires. I think definitely with Marcus Freeman, it's like, you know, when you're more of a defensive coach, getting that offensive hire seems so much more important, because you're trying to figure out where the baseline is of, like, you know, at least USC knows the offense is going to be good every year. But Lincoln Riley, like, I don't know, if I'm a defensive guy, like, you got to think, like, I could come in and make USC a powerhouse if we're able to play competent defense. You don't even have to be good defensively. You just have to be not terrible, because you're saying, who are you just talking about? Washington is 37th and defensive. Like, we have seen teams win national championships, like with defenses like that. Like, I don't know.
They were also the blue chip
numbers,
ratio, though.
But they had Joe Burrow and they had Cam Newton is what they had when they did it. So, you know,
Michael Penix is just as good, by the way.
He is he's not Joe Burrow or Cam Newton. That's like
he's really, really good.
I've ever seen. Michael Penix has definitely been good. And he's a potential Heisman.
He's not Cam. Like, Cam's maybe the best college.
He's not
season
Joe
I've
Burrow.
ever seen.
Like,
but
Joe Burrow is the best season I've ever seen. But yeah, Cam was
Joe
just
Burrow best season.
Planet. I mean, threw like 60 touchdowns. Like, it was.
I'm not disagreeing, but I just think it's also that was the most complete offensive season I've ever seen.
It was.
I don't know if
Cam
I
was a one-man team.
Yeah,
like, for sure. That LSU team was definitely loaded. But Joe Burrow was insane. Cam Newton was carried.
I just don't think you'll ever see Cam Newton, a player, just by himself take a team that way. Like, I think Cam by himself.
No, exactly. So, but USC is one of those teams, like what Lincoln Riley was doing in Oklahoma. Like, that Oklahoma team in 2017 with Baker Mayfield, that's the best Oklahoma team in recent history. And I think they were like the 40th ranked defense in the country or something. They were just like not awful defensively. And it's like, hey, we can win something now. And then all the other years they're in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, they're going to lose inexplicably to Kansas State, just putting up 48 points on them one Saturday a season. So, you know, you saw Cal. What was the score of that game? Was it 50-49 or something a couple weeks ago? Cal USC. So it's like, if you can't stop anybody, you know, you can't, you know, you can lose to anybody. So I would think if you're a big time, and maybe it's a culture thing, like Lincoln Riley prioritizes offense. If you're a defensive guy, you don't even want to go in there. But I would think if you're a big time DC, like going to USC, you know, you can recruit the top level talent, and you can actually get them playing competent defense. That's a national championship recipe.
Yeah, and if I'm Lincoln Riley, like, you're going big game hunting here. Like, you need to resolve this in a hurry. I don't know who that is. I don't know who the best target is for them. But if I'm Lincoln Riley, I take this very seriously, because it's a pivotal moment for your program. Like, you're going to you have the Zachariah Branches. You have the 5-star kid quarterback coming in, Juju Lewis, the 2024 or 2026 Carrollton quarterback.
Maybe they'll bring in Jeremy Pruitt.
That would be. I mean, you need to think bold. He has a show cause, so you can't bring him in now.
Is that right?
Somebody like that. I would think bold. I would think Southeast. Like, get an SEC guy. Like, an ex-SEC guy would be where I would go with Lincoln Riley, because you need some of those guys on that side of the ball anyway. That's why you went in the portal and got a Bear Alexander. Like, that would be a outside the box type deal that I think Lincoln Riley needs to seriously consider. And then Notre Dame, like, there's a reason that you were trying to get Utah's offensive coordinator once Tommy Rees left, and not closing that deal, I think, has really hurt them. Like, if you get Ludwig from Utah, it's a big win for your program, and we might be looking at Notre Dame a little bit different. But I mean, Hartman was awful in this game. He's now 0 for 5 against Clemson in his career, which is amazing. That's a long college career. But Jeremiah Trotter had like 2 sacks, a pick 6. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., excuse me. But Hartman had a horrific game in Death Valley, and Tyler from Spartansville, or wherever it's come from, Spartanburg.
Spartanburg.
Yeah. He fired up Dabo. He turned the whole program around. Dabo owes him a whole heck of a lot because we have not seen Clemson look like that in weeks. And I feel like that kind of turnaround, Tyler deserves a lot of credit for that one. But I'm excited to see how both coaches handle these big coordinator positional job changes, because I think they're pivotal for where they are in their tenure at their schools.
Clemson had like 3 guys in their secondary that were out for this game too, and beat Notre Dame. That was a pretty big time win. Yeah, I'll be interested to see where Notre Dame goes, because Tommy Rees wasn't exactly breaking records with that Notre Dame offense. So there's definitely some pressure for Freeman, because I don't know, what is this? This is only year 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's been some good, but there's been a lot of concerning in the first 2 years under Marcus Freeman. And this guy didn't inherit a rebuild like some of these other coaches. This is more of a Dan Lanning kind of. He inherited a program that was doing really well, and even more so than Oregon. Like they went to a couple college football playoffs. So the expectations aren't necessarily the same as they are for Billy Napier or someone that's rebuilding right now.
Absolutely. Matt Green, more concerned, Florida State or Ohio State playing down to competition? Ohio State's now 16th in S&P Plus after their win on Saturday against Rutgers. They kind of struggled throughout on the road in that one. Florida State, Pitt jumps on them early, 24-7 win overall. I don't know. Are you more concerned about the struggles of Florida State or Ohio State playing down to competition in the last few weeks?
I guess when you say it that way, I would be more concerned about Florida State, because I think they're truly playing down to competition. But Ohio State, it's like I think this is just kind of how good they are. Like this isn't a dominant offense, but it's a really, really good defense. And this is just kind of who they are. When you're not scoring a lot of points, you're not going to blow a lot of teams out. And this score definitely looks a little better than this game was going. It was a little shaky there for a while. But yeah, I think with Ohio State, this is kind of who you are. And there's a chance, you can go all the way to the national championship winning this way if your defense is that good. But there's also a chance you're going to have to score enough. You're going to have to score some points. They feel really like, pre-offensive explosion Georgia. Like 2019, 2020 Georgia, of just like they're loaded across the board, but the offense is just the quarterback play is holding them back, and it's just the defense is like one of the best in the country, but the offense is just going to keep them from blowing out just about anybody. So I think obviously we know about the playmakers, but the playmakers have been there all season, and Marvin Harrison's doing everything he's supposed to do, and this offense just isn't as good as it's been in like every year that Ohio State since Urban Meyer got there and Ryan Day. So I think I'd be a little more concerned I guess I'm going both ways, because you're a little concerned of Ohio State because this is who we are, but the last one you got to get up for is Michigan. So if they beat Michigan, this is who they are. But Florida State, I'm just not sure anyone on the schedule can beat them. But if you're playing down to the competition, then anyone can beat you.
Louisville's playing really good ball right now. Louisville, they've one loss. Like Louisville.
Are they legit though?
Their defense has played really, really well the last 3 weeks, and they look pretty complete. The numbers bear it out. Louisville's good, man. I don't know if they're best in the ACC good, but they're coming in. Then North Carolina, you just
nobody, Paul.
I don't know. Louisville, I think, is a good team. I think Louisville's a good football team. I also think North Carolina. Oh, go.
Sorry. That Notre Dame win is not looking quite as impressive, as the weeks go by. And then they caught Duke at the perfect time, just absolutely injured and everything. So I really don't. I say that jokingly, but I think this is why they were a preseason dark horse, not because they were actually that good, but because they had a favorable schedule. So the rest of the way, Virginia at Miami, and then Kentucky, like there is a chance they go into the ACC championship with just one loss.
Yeah, and that could make that a whole lot more interesting. And then North Carolina, you never know what you're getting week over week. Matt Green, Texas, they survive in overtime against Kansas State. That was a really fun game late. And then Oklahoma drops their second game to Oklahoma State to finish Bedlam, Matt Green. Texas in overtime, does that make you wonder more about where Texas is at, or is Oklahoma going down and dropping their second game the year to Oklahoma State more of like, oof, where this time to raise some eyebrows about what's going on with the Sooners the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think definitely it's obviously Oklahoma lost, so that's definitely worse than a close win. So I think that this was huge because you look at Oklahoma State's schedule, like they might be favored in every game the rest of the way. Like all they have is the new kids on the block in the Big 12 left. They don't have any of the I think it's Houston, BYU, and UCF. I think for them the rest of the way. So good teams, but I think Oklahoma State should be favored. But Oklahoma, I mean, I think you got to be. This is just year 2 of Brent Venables, but you got to feel like this kind of got away from you. You beat Texas, and now to lose back-to-back game, and they've been messing around with a few teams this year, so they've had a few close wins, and then to lose to Kansas and Oklahoma State after beating Texas, like that's pretty demoralizing.
No, and I mean, Texas, good teams survive in advance. So I think Texas deserves a lot of credit for getting a gutsy win at home without your starting quarterback.
Kansas State's a good team.
Yeah, Kansas State's a great team, and you find a way to win. And I think that's huge. And Oklahoma State, man, they're playing, like you said, really, really good football all across the board here late. And it's a huge win. And it's also a great ending where they were playing like Taylor Swift. We're never, ever getting back together, blasting in the stadium as Oklahoma's going off the field and everything. And that's a cool ending for that.
I'm happy for Oklahoma State. The reason it ended this way, this is why we'll get Bedlam like sooner rather than later. Because Oklahoma fans. No, I'm saying it. Bedlam's gonna come back.
Like you said, this is why it's gonna happen sooner rather than later.
Oh shoot, I didn't. I definitely did that on purpose. But yeah, because Oklahoma fans, they're not gonna be able to sit with that. Like Oklahoma State won the last Bedlam. Like, no, we need to get this back. The backyard brawl. I don't know how many years they were off West Virginia, Pittsburgh, but they got it. They got it back together. So I do love the song, the sentiment. But no, we are gonna get this rivalry back together.
As we wrap up here, Matt Green, it's our favorite game of the week. It's really your favorite game. Is Florida going to make a bowl game, sir? Because they just dropped an extremely important game yesterday at home to the Arkansas Razorbacks, who had lost like 13 of the last 15 SEC games. Really in the tank this year. Fire your OC a couple weeks prior in Dan Enos. They're really reeling. Sam Pittman, we talked about, like, what does his job security look like the rest of the way here. And he gets a huge win on the road in the Swamp with the Gators wearing the black jerseys. They miss a field goal because they get a penalty right before the guy kicks, and he's like perfect under 40 yards, and then the 5-yard penalty puts him at 44, so they promptly miss the field goal at 44. Like little things like that just, I mean, soul-crushing stuff if you're a Gator fan for this one. But Matt Green, I ask you, is Florida going to make a bowl game? They're 5-4.
Let me start by saying this. Can you imagine if we went in a time machine back to August and I told you through 9 games, Graham Mertz is going to be completing 74% of his passes and had 17 touchdowns and 2 picks? What would you have said Florida's record was after 9 games? Like 8-1, 7-2 at worst? Like this guy's balling? Graham Mertz is not the problem. And Florida still has dropped another one. And I was telling anyone who would listen that this Arkansas game, like that was penciled in as a W. Like, okay, you'll beat Arkansas. They're terrible. But Missouri and Florida State, these other tough teams, Georgia, obviously late in the season, these are probably going to be losses. Like now that you've lost to Arkansas, you can lose to anybody. Like you can obviously, Missouri is not this, unstoppable force. It's not like it would be crazy if Florida were able to beat Missouri, but this Missouri team right now looks a whole hell of a lot better than Florida, and Florida State definitely does not look like a win on that schedule. So at 5-4 right now, I'm saying no. I think they go 0-3 the rest of the way. and that would be 5 straight to end this season.
So you think what's the best opportunity for them than the last 3? What are the last 3, just for the listeners to know what we're looking at here for Florida down the stretch?
So by the way, Napier right now is 11-11, and that's the worst. The previous worst 22 game start was Ron Zook at 14-8. So
Really,
Ron Zook era wasn't very good, and it was better than this. So this week they got at LSU. After that, they go at Missouri, and then the final week at home they'll have Florida State in the annual rivalry. So, I mean, they're not going to be favored. They literally might be double-digit underdogs in all 3 of those games. Like at Missouri, I don't think.
The Missouri's tough because we'll see what happens against Tennessee. Like if Tennessee blows out Missouri, or Tennessee really if Tennessee gets that win, then Missouri suddenly is reeling because then they have back-to-back losses. They're not playing for anything. Like then you could see like maybe the wheels are coming off down the stretch for Mizzou. I think that's the most winnable game of the 3 for them.
I think it has to be. Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that LSU is everybody's get-right game. So this offense could score 45 against LSU, and this could be an absolute track meet. So, LSU might be it might be the most winnable game just because they can beat anybody and they can also lose to anybody.
I didn't realize 11-11. Worst start since Ron Zook.
Yeah, I think he was 14-8. I want to say Muschamp was like 15-7. And then maybe McElwain was like 16-5. It's like these guys were not remembered fondly, and they're all doing a whole hell of a lot better than Napier. And Napier, I am not a fire a guy in 2 years guy by any means, but if he's sitting at 11-11 right now, and we're talking about 3 losses in the season, that's 11-14. I think I saw a stat. I can't remember who dropped this stat, but in terms of SEC schools, I don't think there's an SEC school, a guy that's had back-to-back losing seasons and not been fired, other than like Vanderbilt or like some of the other like bottom feeders in the SEC. I should have come better with a stat. It was half-baked, but so if they sit at 11-14 after year 2, like the fact that you're recruiting so well, I feel like people are, they're buying Napier's vision, but you got to see something on the field at some point. Like, I don't think he should get fired. I don't think he does get fired, even if they finish 5-7 this year. But you're talking about like, you got to see something year 3, or he definitely goes in on a hot seat in year 3. I think it fairly or unfairly, because this was a rebuild job. Like you had to get the hay in the barn, but I don't know. It's still the SEC, and it's still unrealistic fan expectations.
And also, if you look at their 2024 schedule, Matt Green, it's brutal. They get Miami and Florida State in the out of conference, along with UCF. They go to Florida State. They go to Texas. They go to Tennessee.
Playing Miami and UCF and Florida State same year. That's awesome.
Yes. I mean, it's awesome. Not if you're Billy Napier trying to save your job, because that's brutal. You obviously got Georgia in a neutral site. And then you go to Mississippi State too, but that's obviously not a big one. But then you get A&M and Ole Miss from the West. Like, I mean, that just, I don't think it's
they have
gonna work.
LSU next year?
They do have LSU.
Okay. I think 2024, they kept some of those rivalries. They don't know what they're doing in 2025 and on, but 2024, we still got a good bit of the rivalries left.
Yeah, I mean, it looks rough. You thought it was going to be a March the 6th this year. I think it's going to be a tough March the 6th next year for Napier and company, because I don't see the wins. That's going to be a tough schedule. Well, there we go, Matt Green. Fun weekend of college football once again. Week 11 is going to be electric as well. Tennessee, Mizzou at 3:30, and then we move right into Georgia and Ole Miss under the lights right after, along with Penn State and Michigan and plethora of other big games that we'll preview in the middle of this week. But that is all I've got tonight, my friend.
That's the one thing I'll give the Big Ten. The big noon, I disagree fundamentally with making your best game of your conference slate at noon, but it makes for a great TV watching, just get that Big 10 noon game, then the 3:30 SEC game, then whatever the biggest night game is. It's great for the consumer. I'm here for it.
I mean, I'm here for it too, and that's what you associate with the nooner is you just look for the best Big Ten game going on, and you'll find it. Matt Green, always a pleasure.
Maserati Marv.
Matt Green, always a pleasure. I'll talk to you in a couple days.
Yes.